Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. Well, apparently, today, the watchword for today is authenticity. And so we've got another authentic guest with us today. She is dynamic, and she's called, I forget suddenly what she's,
the sassy sage.
That's the one, the sassy sage, and she's worked with Bob Goff, and he helped her. She's got a couple of books out. She's got one book that came out in November. She's got another book that's coming out in September. We're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about her podcast. We might even talk about her chefdom as being a pastry chef. But first, Michele, you're magically invisible again.
Yes, I'm here, Kevin, and hello, Michele. I am very excited for this conversation, as I usually am. I love your website, michelevrabel.com. You do so many things, and it really is just exciting to have you here, and I can't wait to see where the conversation even goes. So how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous, and I can't wait either. I did a little reel yesterday, and my daughter's handling my social media, and it was so fun. And I tagged you guys. I don't know if you saw it, but I was in a turban in my bathroom, and I turned to the camera and said, "Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up." And then I went, "I'm going live tomorrow." And so my daughter, so cute, she made the first part black and white. And then she did that weird old movie thing, and we just had the best time.
Oh, that is cool. Michele, can you raise your volume just a little bit?
Yes, of course. Is that better?
That's better. Yes, indeed. And it is great fun to talk to you, and you're doing so much. And first of all, Bob Goff is a bit of a thing. He's been around a while. He's got his own podcast. He's also an author. He's done a ton of stuff. How did you meet him?
Well, it was so bizarre. And to be honest with you, I don't even know how to pinpoint it. But I do know I'm a Christian, and the Lord led me to write my story. And I went through several processes, and then I just felt like, okay, it's time for me to call in the professionals. And I had talked to a couple people in a group I was in, but for whatever reason, I wasn't having a peace about it. And somehow I ended up in a conversation on social media with the guy who handles Booking Bob for his coaching. And I didn't even know he did coaching. He would never have been, there are so many Christian authors I would have loved to, and he was one of them, but I just didn't know they did that. I was like, they're not going to waste time on us little, peons. And so I end up in the phone with this guy, and it was hilarious. I'm a bookkeeper by day. So we end up talking a lot more about accounting than probably anything. And then he says we start talking about the programs, and there are very high-end ones, which I did not have the money for. And he kept going, and then this one, and I'm like, And then he goes, and then this one, I go, oh, okay, now we're better. But yeah, Bob Goff, and he works with Kimberly Stewart. They have a podcast together called The Writing Room. And then Bob has his Love Does, and she has one called For Real. They are incredible people. So sweet. I just, as I was telling you before, I would not be here without them. I just don't know that. The Lord believes in me, but that's the whole point. That's the healing I've needed all along, is believing in myself.
Well, and I'll tell you a couple things. First of all, there's no such thing, I'm sure, in Bob's world as a little peon.
No.
Everybody is important. Every human being is important. And I also want to stress the fact that this was no accident that you ran into Bob and he ended up wanting to work with you. That's how, from my standpoint, that's how the universe works. And that's how God works, is he lines up things for you. And then it's your job to say yes. And that's
Divine
and you
intervention.
that's exactly right. And would you agree with that, Michelle?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's really just, it comes down to a lot of what we've talked about recently, and it's people just don't have the knowledge. They really just don't know. And so the realization of that can be the dynamic thing that changes it all. Did you have that experience, Michelle?
Absolutely. And it's so funny because I can kind of, I'm, like I said before, I'm 63. And so with each passing skill set, the Lord has chosen to have me learn. And you said before, I'm a pastry chef. My first badge in Girl Scouts was baking. So that's how far back that goes. We won't even say how old you are in the Girl Scouts, but whatever. So then as a pastry chef, you can't be a pastry chef and get to make desserts. I love desserts, but you have to be willing to do novelty cakes for birthdays and wedding cakes. So I do. Well, people think that fondant on a cake, if you understand what that is, it's kind of Play-Doh for cake. And they think it's hard to work with. They think it's scary, that they can't do it. And so I don't want to convince them it isn't, because then I'd be out of a job. But it's not. In fact, in my opinion, piping actual buttercream is way harder than just rolling out some Play-Doh, if you just think of it that way, and putting it on a cake. So anyway, back to then, the writing, I had no idea what I was doing. At first I thought, okay, the Lord's just asking me to put my story down to help myself. And absolutely, every bit of this has been my healing journey. So I just sat down, and it's funny, I got recommended by my editor on my first book, and she's the editor on my second book too. But anyway, she recommended this little skinny book. It was called The Memoir Project. And this lady has an actual algorithm for how a memoir should be written. And I'm a geek about science and math, so I was ecstatic. I read that thing in about an hour. I read that whole book. And she talks about the first thing somebody should do when telling their story is do a vomit draft, where you don't self-edit, you don't worry about if the person who abused you or whatever your story is, you don't worry about whether they're going to be over your shoulder. You just do it. Well, it's funny. I hadn't read that book when I first wrote it down, but that's exactly what I did, a vomit draft. And the way I wrote it was exactly how it ended up getting published. It was written in seasons of my life, and then coming from the emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical. And I couldn't be more ecstatic. I'm not proud in the sense of like puffed up, look what I did, but proud that and the Lord rolls his eyes at me that it took 63 years, but I did it.
Well, but from our standpoint, and first of all, before I go there, because you're a pastry chef and you're a bread baker and that kind of stuff, I have to shout out to my sister, who is also a baker, and she loves to make sourdough, and she has got a sourdough live yeast thing. I've never seen it.
It's called starter, yeah.
Yeah, and she calls him Gladys calls her Gladys because Gladys is always growing. It's alive. You have to water it. You have to take care of it, and then you take part of it to make your bread, but then you keep the rest of it. Is that how it works? That's how she tells me it works, and she calls him Gladys.
For sourdough, yes. And people like give it down. I might be exaggerating a little, but they give it down through generations. Like grandma may have had a jar of it going on, or a plastic bag, and then she'll give it to the daughter and the granddaughter. And so people who like sourdough bread and like making it themselves. And I do like that part of being a pastry chef, but I'm more on the dessert side. More than anything, but I do understand. I have baked my share of bread and cinnamon rolls and pecan rolls and bear claws.
I'm coming to your house. Do you have some now?
Well, and the funny part is I'm allergic to chocolate.
That doesn't make any sense.
So I have volunteers out the wazoo to come over and taste things for me, and they let me know. And so now I've just come to the place where I know a recipe tastes good, unless I did something in the making that screwed it up. But yeah, if I make a big batch of brownies for some event, I got people coming out of the woodwork to eat all the corners and.
Well, and I have to tell you, because my sister has a great friend. They've been friends since they were 6, and they're now in their 70s. And her mother passed away recently, and so she came up for the memorial service. So Gladys had a child, and Gladys, the starter, she gave part of the starter to her friend, who now there's a child, a starter child out there from Gladys, if that makes any sense at all. People are going to tune into this right now, and they're going, what in the heck are they talking about?
Not every woman who makes sourdough bread, I tell you, and it's a rage right now. Like, it's all over social media, people having starters or asking, hey, does anybody out there have some starter already done? I'd like a little lump of it or whatever.
Michele, have you ever heard such a thing?
Actually, I have. I think, it's kind of like a respect thing. It's kind of like a I love you thing. How we talked about momentum in the last show. It has purpose, because it's like you're creating generations from something that was started from one person of something else. And when you do this, though, I wonder. I have yeast at home that is way too old probably to use, and I would not like to talk about that. But if I were to start that process, is it in the making of the yeast, Michele, that usually maybe we've seen that it's a little harder to do, so people are more thankful for it? Kind of like I think about it in life as when you go through something super, super hard and people recognize that and they see that and they want a little piece of what you've got to give a little bit too. Or is it just
lovely
really
traditions and stuff? It is funny because yeast is a finicky little thing.
It's alive.
It is. And, if you just put in a little too much sugar or a little too much hot water or whatever it might be, in fact, with baking as a whole, there's a balance. It's not like cooking. Like, you can throw some chicken in a skillet and just start throwing all kind of capers and lemon juice and blah, blah, blah. You can go crazy and you don't have to measure. There's really, for me, there's only one place where I don't have to measure. And that's because I'm a connoisseur, I'm a aficionado, I'm whatever, of bread pudding. I have about 30 flavors. And anybody, watching this show right now, if you happen to be any of my friends, you can throw in the comments and say, but I have every event that I ever made the desserts for, people were like, you got to have the bread pudding. We don't care what else you bring, but you got to do this. Well, you don't have to measure a whole lot. You need whole eggs in there. You need milk, you need creamer, you need whatever. And then whatever kind of cool bread. But when it comes to baking bread, it is a meticulous science. And you've probably seen it even if you've tried to make chocolate chip cookies at home. Yeah. You get the wrong balance of sugar, you'll have these little flat crisps instead of cookies. So yeah, it is a thing. And I think with that, it's been going on since people showed up on, probably before that, but it got to American soil. So it is a beautiful tradition to pass down.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's alive, and so we got to take our break, and so that's a shout out to my sister who's got a live thing in her refrigerator.
Hi,
that she has to keep up and keep it alive and keep it going and stuff because her husband he loves to eat, and so just sourdough is something I know, but some of us make it an art form,
Right.
and he makes it an art form rather than just a substance kind of thing. So we're talking with Michele Vrabel. She is the Sassy Sage, and we are going to be right back. She's a podcaster. She's an author. We're going to talk about her book when we come back, and all the things that she's done to put it into it, and that can benefit you. And we might even later on in the show, we might even encourage her to read a passage from the book. That would be fun, don't you think, Michele?
Yes, let's do it.
Oh no, I need to come up with one.
No pressure.
No.
And we'll be right back, everybody. It's just 45 seconds. Just calm down.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to Positive Talk. Thank you, Michele, for dancing to the music, because sometimes the music just doesn't work. And so now I know that it works. And Michele Vrabel is with us, and she is a Sassy Sage. And that was given to her by somebody else. She didn't name herself that. Somebody else gave her that. And it's great to have you here.
Other people have given me a lot of names.
Me too.
Some of them good, some of them not so good.
I think that's how we got to Sassy.
Wow, that's awesome. So tell us about the book. The first book is Butterfly
Stitches, The Metamorphosis of Healing.
Perfect.
And the second book that's coming out, and this is not the official cover, but Out Loud, The Sound of Healing, where I'm standing behind a mic. Now, the second book has a healing companion, a workbook that goes with it that kind of takes everything from both books and helps you get to actionable stuff. And I'm going to have, the Lord's called me to do some retreats that are really deep dive, only 5 people. I'm just the kind of person, I'm not saying that if you go to a conference and there's 300 people that you don't come back with something. But a lot of times we come back and a few days later, it's all fizzled out, you know? And yeah. I want to be able to help people genuinely get on their healing journey or continue their healing journey. And I will even have ongoing Zoom conversations with them to make sure we're all staying on task. So anyway, yes, to come back last November, Butterfly Stitches, my very first book released. And it was so overwhelming to see my story out there because it's got some very intense stuff in it. I've suffered a lot of, and I want to be careful because I know this is live, but there's been a lot of wounds through different abuse, emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical from my childhood on. And Butterfly Stitches covers my life from birth to right before I meet who is now my ex-husband. And then Out Loud goes from there up to currently where we are. And then it also, the second half of it covers more in depth, how my journey began, what about it is different, why I feel, I mean, everybody has their own idea of what is the healing journey for them. I just know what I've been told to do. I have walked, and I want to share that for sure.
You know, since you are a very young person at 63, that there's going to be a third and probably a fourth. Do you know that?
Well, I wasn't sure. And I honestly was silly enough to be sitting here thinking, you know, my typesetter's supposed to be getting me Out Loud back. We'll get it uploaded. The launch is on September 22nd. And then I will sit back and relax after that. Well, then he brought up the retreats. So I'm like, okay, no, I can't. But there is a part of this journey, like we were talking before with Michelle, about feeling like an imposter, or feeling like, are you sure I'm the one to tell this story, kind of a thing. And the Holy Spirit has shown me that I need to be present in what I'm doing and not anxious for what's down the road or the next thing I have to do in the day. And so I think there is another book that's about learning how to be present, so that anxiety of your identity and that anxiety can, get out of the car, not just get in the back seat, but get out of the car.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, all you have is today.
Yeah. Every morning I say, thank you, Lord, for a good night's sleep. And thank you for waking me up.
Because tomorrow has not been written yet. And that is in my mind, it's a compilation between you and your guides and the Holy Spirit and whoever you want to call for the other side, that is interested in your betterment and you fulfilling your life purpose. That's why we're all here. And so at the tender age, and I can say this because I'm no longer 63, and wait till you're 64 and then you can play the Beatles song all the time.
Yes. You know what, I had
64.
a guy, it's hilarious. On my birthday every year I go to a beach. And this friend of mine goes with me quite a bit. As my Facebook memories come up, it's hilarious. She's in every year almost. So one year we were in San Diego and we were taking a lift over to this one beach where we have one of our favorite restaurants. And this little Filipino guy was our driver. He was adorable. And I told him it was my birthday and he knew my name because of, you have to put your name in Lyft.
Yeah.
And he's all of a sudden quiet, but there's a flurry of activity in the front seat. And he hangs his phone back up and Michelle starts playing and he sings the whole song. It was hilarious. I had to get out my phone and I videoed him, and it was hilarious. He looked like he was at a karaoke bar.
Oh, that is
good.
good.
More times than I could count.
Oh, I'm willing to bet. So did Michelle Obama, and at the White House and stuff when Paul played there. But it's remarkable, the story that you have to tell. And by the way, you are the only person who can tell that story the way it needs to be told, from your heart and from your experiences, because everybody can see, because you're on the back cover and that it turned out okay, and that you've risen above all of that. And that's why there's going to be a third book and there's going to be a fourth book, because it's you're far, you're 100 years from getting to go home. And so you're gonna be.
I don't want to live to 160.
Well, the funny thing is, my mother passed away at 90, and on Wednesday she went to dinner and with some friends, and on Thursday she played bridge, and she was supposed to go to a party on Saturday. She didn't show up at the party, and then they went and they found out that she had passed away on Friday in her bed because we saw her. They had us come before the folks that do this for a living and take take people away. And she was lying in bed in her pajamas with the Bible open and had been reading the Bible, and she just passed away.
I check, please. Because I'm not in a rush. I don't want to go right now. I would love to see my daughter get married, but that is, there are ways we know we don't want to go. I don't want to get eaten by anything. I don't want to get burned. I'd really rather not drown. So going to sleep one night and not waking up in the presence of Jesus. Yes. Pick me.
And that was her ultimate desire. But she was planning on living to 112. So when she got there, she was like, I was going to live for another 14 years.
What would you do?
So, but in any event, we're talking with Michele Vrabel and Michele. I'm going to get the two of your names mixed up at one point during this show, I promise. But Michele, do you have a thought?
Yeah, honestly, Michele, I'm thinking about your book and the title of it. And I mean, Butterfly Stitches. First of all, I would really love to hear where that came from and how it all came into play. And secondly, just that reminds me so much of how you're a caterpillar and you go through this phase and you come out the other side. And it's so easy sometimes for people to just kind of get stuck in that cocoon and not knowing when they're going to pop out and what it's going to be like and all those things. And I think it really just comes down to a lot of surrendering and letting the process happen rather than fighting it. But I think that's beautiful in the way you've chosen to bring out this book to attention of yourself is that name. So I will let you have the floor of explaining how you got that.
Okay. There's a funny story behind it, but there's also the main story. And I love double meanings. Kevin
Right.
and I were discussing this, but a butterfly stitch is a medical device. And it is used on a wound that's too shallow for regular stitches.
Mm-hmm.
And so you put that over a wound. And the point of it being that in our healing of a wound that has a butterfly stitch, you have to participate. Like with stitches, you just leave them in there till it heals, you go and get them removed. But with a butterfly stitch, you have to take it off, you have to clean out the wound, you have to, put any kind of medicine in and then put another one on. So you have to participate in the healing that comes with a butterfly stitch. And that is how that came about, because I honestly believe that we have to acknowledge the wounds that have taken place. We have to acknowledge where the Holy Spirit had already started the healing when I was little. When I was 2 years old, one of the worst beatings I received, I recall looking at my dad as he was leaving the room and thinking, he's just bad. I mean, I was 2, so it wasn't this concept of God per se, and it wasn't even a concept of evil, but bad and good. By the time you're 2, you've probably been swat on the bottom before for doing something. And so that is why I portrayed the name and the cover this way. There's a butterfly stitch. My niece does great makeup, costume makeup or what have you. And so we're showing that we carry those wounds into adulthood if they're not addressed. And so that is the reason behind the name. But also, this is going to sound really funny. I'm so bizarre. This is why Sassy Sage. So when I was getting ready to get married, my father has not been in my life since I was 14. And I was thinking about, who's giving me away. I have 2 brothers, all this stuff. And it was around that time that the song Butterfly Kisses was coming out. And I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a Christian song, and it's a daddy singing about, his little girl and all the stages up to her wedding day. And I'm such a smart ass. I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to say that. But I started rewriting the words and singing it as I was driving along. And I put the words in butterfly stitches. And I can't remember all the words now, but it was about bruises as opposed to little flowers up in her hair. And I think it's hilarious. People just freak out. But I'm like, you need to know, I'm not there anymore. Not there anymore. And that's what I'm trying to share with you. So
That's wonderful. I love that. Truly.
It is as it is with everyone. And that's why your story, as you tell it, is so important, because life is a process, and we all get through the things that we go through. Sometimes it takes a lot of therapy, and sometimes it takes a coach. It takes people who are in your corner to help you get through it so that you can live your best life. But that being said, a book like this can help people understand that their trauma is also shared by others, and that because you have come out the other side and have written a couple of books, soon to be 4, I believe, I, all right.
I'm not that sassy.
I'm just gonna stick that in your head so that you know. So anyway,
Yeah,
but
I'm
it's
not going to say the Lord isn't already doing that.
well, you know, sometimes God has strange instruments that He brings to bear on certain things, and so you know, I will gladly take that mantle because I really think that your story is important. Michele, I've been doing this for 20 years or more. And every woman that I've talked to, there has not been one that said, my life has been sunshine and rainbows, and I've had perfect everything, and everything has just been just wonderful. Great family, great husband, great this, great that. I haven't had that conversation with a human being yet because we all have trauma and we all have things. It's how we deal with them and how we can come out the other side and be whole and then to give back to others because service is the highest calling that we can have. Do you agree with that?
I do. And it's also the greatest form of healing for us because you can't export what you haven't already, imported and what you haven't walked through. And so then to turn around and be able, because I'm not picking on people who haven't been through a bunch of stuff, but it'd be hard to go and talk with somebody about, the infidelity you're going through with, like I did with my ex, and talk with somebody who's never experienced that and just have them kind of sit there saying stuff like, I know what you're going through, and you don't. And I'm not saying you have to go talk to somebody I was beaten as a child, I was sexually molested. But if I'm standing in a room, like you said, if I'm standing in a room, and this is probably conservative, of 100 people, 90 of them, male and female, have walked some of what my journey is. And they were precious. More people have been so precious. They've looked at the cover of my book and they start crying. And they're like, I honestly know that there's nothing about your book that isn't going to feed me, that I need to hear. And I don't even know what to do with that. I just start blubbering.
Just say thank you and read the book and you'll be. Michele, I think we need to take our break now, don't we?
Yes, we do. But we've got lots more questions when we come back.
Okay.
I'd like to talk about what got you starting to speak aloud and share your podcast and start doing that kind of stuff after, was it before or after you wrote the book and getting into all of that? Because that's been quite a cool little journey for you.
Absolutely. Are we doing that now or we're doing the break?
We're going to do the break first because they make me. So we'll be right back right after this.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Michele's here, and Michele, you have questions for Michele. Michele. I'll get it. So, Michele, go ahead.
Yes, well, Michele, I have to say that your name is very precious to me. That's half of how I got my name. My dad's name is Brent, and my mom's middle name is Michele, and I am Brichelle. So actually, I love that name, and it's pretty cool to be able to say that here on the show with you today. But Before we joined in, you were telling me about the podcast that you do, Old School with Michele, and the journey that kind of got you on, and what made you decide to start speaking aloud more than just your book and talking with people. So how was that going, and how did you start doing that?
Well, it wasn't anything of my doing, because even though chatting like this, I'm a lot to handle. And if I'm in a small group, but if I walked into a room and there were 30 people there and I didn't know them, you're going to find me with my back to a wall, just kind of observing. I call myself an introverted extrovert. So it is not a comfort zone of mine, but we don't grow in our comfort zone.
Right.
So what happened is, after meeting Bob Goff, he is the one who said to me, you've obviously admitted that writing your book isn't about making a bunch of money. It's about your story and about helping others. And if you want to further your story, the absolute best way nowadays is to have a podcast. And I go, oh, okay. And he said, okay, so all you need is a laptop and Zoom, and it does Tuesday work for you. And this was like a Thursday the week before. And I was just like, what? And I know when you're doing a podcast, nobody's actually listening to me at that very time, but I break out into a sweat nonetheless. Like right before I came on here with you guys, I was like praying and doing my breath work. And of course, this is live, so people are hearing me. But anyway, yeah, he said, yes, the podcast. He did tell me 3 layers of speaking that he wanted me to pursue. And I have to admit, I've been a little more remiss in that, because I have a full-time day job in accounting. And so it was just hard getting the words done and all of that done at the same time. But it's not off the table. In fact, I am speaking at a conference the beginning of October. So right after the second book comes out. And then my retreats, which I guess you could call speaking, I like that environment better, will be starting in November. The first one will be here in Scottsdale, Arizona. So it was totally by recommendation of Mr. Bob Goff.
Beautiful.
Well, and Michele, I've got to tell you, be careful what you wish for. And the reason that I say that is I was driving a bus. I drove 50 hours a week. I was doing a podcast every now and again when I was doing my independence report, because I love doing it. And I said to the universe, or to God, and I said, I would really like to do this more. I wanted to make this my vocation. And so he found me a great place to live, which is where I live now. And he gave me some stairs that don't work all that well for me. And so I was carrying a lamp up the stairs, and I tripped and fell and broke my rotator cuff. Had to have surgery on my rotator cuff, was out of work. So I was podcasting. And then my son said, I have a brand new Labrador. I would love to bring my Labrador over, because she's just a puppy and I can't take her camping with me. So I said, oh, I'd love to babysit her for the weekend. And so I came over here, and I don't know if you know anything about Labradors, but they like to get in between your legs and trip you up. And so this dog tripped me up, and I tried not to kill it. Thank goodness I did not. But I fell and tore the tricep off my other arm. So I had to have surgery on that. And so through that, I continued to podcast. But unfortunately, I could no longer work. Because I was a bus driver, and I could no longer do that. And so I was able to then do this full time. I've been doing it ever since full time. So if you don't want to go through a bunch of surgeries to get to this point, be careful about what you're ready for.
Well, people, I'm overwhelming when it comes to like nutrition, and it's not, I'm doing all of it because of anti-aging, but if par chance I'm doing all of this and I don't look 63, I'm not going to argue with that.
You are doing so extremely well. Teach me.
So I do cellular healing. I get rid of the toxins. Nobody's going to be toxin free, but I'm just trying to be a good steward, as they say, of the things that God has given me. And one of those is health, but breath and time. And like you said, our purpose. And we can't fulfill our purpose if we aren't like positioned to be able to do that. Now you're able to do that, even though you did have some physical situations happen too. But I I just genuinely believe that I need to be a good steward. And you couldn't have seen those coming and stopped them. But like some of us, you know, the 8 trips a day to Taco Bell, you know, we can see that coming.
I gotta, Michelle, I gotta ask you, you're young and you've been out late on a weekend night. When was the last time you went to a Taco Bell?
Oh, dang it, Kevin. I think it's actually been like maybe 2 or 3 days now. They have this stupid new burrito that's like a grilled cheese steak, whatever. It has these crunchies inside. It's ridiculously good.
How old are you, young lady?
I am 26 years old, but I have to tell you that my body still gets mad at me for that. I still have to deal with the repercussions. Of course it would. Yes, I do. I still have to deal with those repercussions. And I notice that I tend to make choices like that when I'm not present. If I come back to the present and I'm not living too far forward or too far backwards, that I find myself more attentive and aware of, okay, what am I putting in my body? Why am I doing this? And it's in the times where I'm not present that I'm like, whatever, you know, that's what I want right now, and I'm gonna have it no matter what. And I know that that's natural as a human, but Michelle, I want your perspective of how important it is to be present in your life, because I think a lot of people too, that's where they kind of get stuck maybe, and I've seen that because maybe that's just myself, but when you're not spending time ahead or not spending time prior, and you are focused and you are attentive in this moment, everything that you weren't seeing before, you realize has been right in front of your face. Or has it been different for you?
It's been such an interesting journey, because it wasn't that I didn't remember any of the things that I then had to sit down and write, but I hadn't, back then, nobody dealt with anything. I never had a doctor look at me, even for the sexual molestation. I've never had a counselor. I've never been examined for anything, chatted with about it, none of it. And so I dealt with it at whatever age I was, all the way up till, frankly, now. I had counselors. The first time I ever had counselors was during my divorce, or before my divorce, trying not to have a divorce. And that was a horrible experience. But in any case, I'm not against counselors, okay? But this was just bizarre. But in any case, what I've discovered is that in this long line of life, that the people who have said they love me or who were supposed to and didn't shaped my idea of what that love was supposed to look like, to the point where I was even stiff-arming God for a while. And then once he and I, you know, came to loggerheads, and I started to understand what it genuinely meant to have the kind of love that he gives me, then I could turn around and do the same. Or I could turn around and take a look at the kind of love I accepted because I thought it's all I deserved or whatever. So in that part of my life, yes, I was living with whatever was going on in the past, but not even consciously. Yeah. And so I had some lab work done recently, and it was so fascinating because I went in there and I was like, I don't have anything going on. And I go to a naturopath. I'm just doing my annual checkups. Well, she gets the blood work back and she says there are a lot of inflammation markers. And I'm like, that can't be. I didn't have any alcohol during tax season, and I got rid of the bad oils and all of this stuff. And then she heard me talk a little bit about my story, not in depth, but a little bit. And she just looked at me and she said, Michelle, you've lived with some level of fear your whole life. And I started an ugly cry I didn't think I was going to come back from. And I felt bad for her. It was so obvious. It was so in front of my face that, yes, like sometimes it was less, sometimes it was more, but that whoever was in my life was going to reject me, was going to leave me, didn't mean it, that they loved me. I mean, I was with my ex 8 years, then we got married and we were together 20 years, and the cheating was the entire time. And that's how little I kind of thought of myself and the love I deserved, that I just kept staying, because the Lord hasn't changed his mind about divorce, but he does, you know, when there's infidelity, give us that certificate of divorce, as they say. And so after that meeting with my doctor, it really became necessary for me to say, I need to address this anxiety, this fear, because it's cellular. And that is probably my biggest struggle, I would say right now, that I have experienced healing emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. But emotionally, that fear that has resided in my tissue is it's not going to go away easily. It's alive, like you said.
It's alive.
I have to, that's a battle for me every day. Just like some people have to get up every morning and reissue forgiveness for someone because it's hard for them until you get to the place where you don't have to do that. Well, every day, I call it my board meeting. I have studied the character of God, the character of my King Jesus, and the character of the Holy Spirit. So they sit on the couch across from me in my living room when I have my morning prayer time, and I call them my board of directors. So I have a meeting with them in the morning because they know the beginning from the end. They know how the day is going to go and how I'm going to have to address this anxiety. And if I don't do that in the morning, which I can't even remember the last time I didn't, but if I didn't, you can see how my day goes to see that I'm I can't, that's not a very good type A, check it off the to-do list. I'm failing at it. So it has become so integral for me to be able to do that, to just have a day where I'm not whacked.
You're never whacked.
You can talk to my daughter.
And by the way, we're talking with Michele Vrabel, and we need to take a break and go get Butterfly Stitches and the other one that's coming out in September. And the name of that book I forgot is
Out Loud: The Sound of Healing.
Out Loud, The Sound of Healing. Go. First of all, get Butterfly Stitches, and then by the time you finish that, the other one will be ready. We need to take a break, and then Michele looks like that she's looking for a short passage that we could read when we come back from this break, and we will do that. And this is not really a break. This is a statement from Positive Talk to you. The strength of staying kind from your friends at Positive Talk Radio. Kindness is not weakness. It takes real strength to stay kind in a world that often rewards anger, ego, and control. Being kind means choosing to act from your values, not your wounds. It means showing grace even when no one's watching. But kindness doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean letting people take advantage of your time, your energy, or your peace. You can be kind and still say no. You have a soft heart with firm boundaries. The strongest people I know are the ones who choose compassion without losing themselves. They've been hurt. They've been tested. And still, they choose to love and lead and to lift others anyway. Kindness is not about pleasing everybody. It's about honoring who you are and how you treat others, even when it's hard. So stay kind, stay human, and stay strong. And always remember this: be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. And welcome back to the show, everybody. And Michele, what did you think of my little expose there?
I liked it. That was very nice. I think people do need to be kind. I think, every time I hear people talking about, remember the old Miss America question? If you could do one thing for the world, what would that be? I'd like
world peace. Yeah.
And I think, honestly, genuinely, not even, we're called to love one another as ourselves, but and that it can be expressed in the form of kindness. But if that's all you can muster, I can't even imagine what would happen in this world if people were just kind. Because I just don't understand not being kind. I don't understand what that feeds. You know what I mean? I when I'm kind to somebody, I have brought people to tears. Like my daughter, when she was little, she was so cute. We'd go out to eat and the waitress would come over and bring our food. And she would go, "We're about to bless our food. Is there something I can pray for you about?" And they would burst into tears. We had one get almost militant, like, "No, I'm good," and walk off, come back 2 minutes later and sit down sobbing with us. Oh. And we got to know them as a family. We gave him and his girlfriend, wife, whatever, a baby gift when they had a child. That's how well we got to know him. And so just that little act of kindness, even if people don't necessarily believe in the God you're praying to, they understand what that means for somebody to take time out of their day to lift your name before who they believe in. And I just think it takes 2 seconds.
Yep.
That's all it does. And you can do it too. Well, I drove a bus for 12 years as well. And there's a lot of meanness on buses. I don't know if you've noticed, if you've ever ridden a bus. But kindness is something that you can do, and it doesn't cost you a thing. And you can do it for your cashier at the grocery store. You can do it to your bus driver. You can do it to people that you might not think are very nice to you, but you can be kind instead. And that doesn't mean you have to be nice to everybody. Just be kind. And if being kind means have a nice day, see you later. And that's all it means.
Walk away.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And we're talking with the sassy sage, and her name is Michele Vrabel. Did you come up with a passage to read?
I did. I chose to read a little piece out of the epilogue because the entirety of the book has some descriptors that are about abuse and stuff. And I just didn't want to do that to your live audience. A lot of times you want to put up the ability for them to like shut it off or what have you. And I mean, it's not the whole book, but it's enough that I think taking this little passage would be good. Okay. Are we
Perfect.
ready? Get my
Michele, ready?
I should probably find my glasses, but here we go. My King and Savior and Creator was not consulted for any of the preceding advice, and thankfully has been my real counselor and comforter since before I was knit together in my mother's womb. The world and Christians are fully human. What they have to offer needs to be viewed through that lens. Ultimately, my faith worldview is what kept me from taking my life as a victim or in shame. It also kept my own evil choices from totally ending my relationship with my King. I do not tell my story to brag or to justify any of my behaviors. I tell it because my King asked me to, actually told me to. In Romans 8:28, he promises that all things work together for good for those whom he loves and called according to his purpose. I truly believe that if anyone who has walked my path could have even a little light shed on what is all generated within us to survive, that would be worth the telling. Those in the world around us who we are in relationship with could benefit from understanding why we do what we do as well. Butterfly Stitches is about what happened to me. It is not who I am. Who I am is the culmination of what my Creator and I constructed in my heart and mind to reconcile 25 years of choices and consequences. I got saved at age 14, but I truly believe that my King was with me all the way, giving me a mind and a heart that was set on him to understand what was happening. Truly hearing from him at the age of 2 began the lifelong healing of the wounds to my heart, soul, mind, and body. The healing, the recovery, the working together for good has been a magnificent journey. Now you know the beginning of our story. Next, you will know the fulfillment of my healing journey. Then you can hear your healing out loud.
Very nice. Michele, what do you think?
Yeah, it's very powerful because no matter what somebody goes through, it's great to them. It is their story and it does matter. I think a lot of times we kind of shut it down and we either go one direction that's like nobody will understand, nobody gets it, and maybe not even God. The universe doesn't understand, but it does, and that's why it gives you these things. But sometimes we take it into the verse of being, why me? And this isn't supposed to happen and it's not supposed to go this way, and we kind of shut down from that or even get explosive. So it opens it up to show that in any view anybody can handle it in any way that they choose, and we have the freedom to do so. And sometimes that can be just, for me it was personally cradling, because then I realized that none of that I had to be a part of that I went through, but it did happen to me, and this is real. This is my life. I tried to separate it a lot of times, but when you come back into yourself and you love yourself as the most highest power, the most love, what creates life and earth and energy and why we're even here, in a way, you'd think it'd make you feel small, but it makes you feel so big because you realize that everything you do builds momentum and you get to choose how that is. And sometimes you're just a little more careful about it. Did it go that way for you, Michelle, or was it more of just a hit in the face? Because I had a few of those too.
Yes, a girlfriend of mine and I came up with this saying. We call it a slap in the faith. Because like some people get a slap in the face.
Yes.
And, again, I've said I'm a Christian. Everybody doesn't necessarily ascribe to creation or to necessarily God or Jesus or what have you. And that's okay. But what I always say is that's okay if you don't believe in him, he believes in you.
That's a good one.
But for me, it was genuinely showing me how I had already heard from him. But, and the churchy platitudes are hard to take when you're walking the walk, when you're going through that journey. But the fact of the matter is the God I believe in doesn't force me to love him. And he doesn't force me to follow his will and purpose for my life. We have free will. And that's unfortunately going to lead to a lot of people in the world who just as soon not, because they think he's a big killjoy and they want to get to go do whatever they need to, want to do. Well, and that's fine. But good or bad, there's consequences to everything we do. If we tell our child we love them and that we believe in them, there's good consequences to that. If we tell them they're an idiot or you're never going to amount to anything, there's consequences to that. So that is how life rolls. And it is hard to understand sometimes when stuff happens to children or younger people. But the fact of the matter is it's happening to everyone. It's at the hands of others. I never throughout my journey was looking to point fingers at people, ever. Even when it was my turn, I just accepted the accountability. I walked away. I was a prodigal for like 10 years. And when I was walking back to the Lord, right as I was getting ready to get married, there was all kinds of chaos going on. And I married him anyway. So, some of it was punch in the throat, but a lot of it was journey.
Yeah, those punches in the throat, though, I'll tell you what, if you don't listen, they get a lot stronger really fast.
Yeah, he will let you take the test again.
Yes. And then that's why it comes into saying, when people say, why is this happening to me? I think when you even start to look at something as why is this happening for me, then the things that happen to you don't seem so negative or so harsh or so hard to get through. But I mean, if what's happening to you is happening to you, you should probably take a look inside rather than asking yourself why everything outside is happening. But Michelle, we are running out of time so sadly, and this has been such a lovely conversation with you. I want to give you the time to share with our listeners anything you'd like to leave them to know with, and then best ways to connect with you and find you and learn from you.
Well, first and foremost, you are not alone, and your story absolutely does matter, and it has to have its opportunity to be said out loud. And you can know and feel safe that it doesn't mean that your abusers are looking over your shoulders to get to do that. That can be something as simple as writing it down. And that is where the beginning was for me. And so that's what's tender to my heart. And that's why I feel even deeper than just my books that the Lord has called me to this retreat, because when there's only 5 people as opposed to a room of a couple hundred, I can really get after it with folks, and especially those that struggle with not wanting to say anything out loud. So that is how I got that name. The picture on the cover is me behind a microphone, which, as I said previously, terrifies the living daylights out of me. But that's, those are the visions that he gave me. So most of the stuff I have done, the books, the podcast, the retreats, are all on my website, michellevrabel.com. I am on social media. Now my Instagram handle is Sweet Art by Shelley. That's the name of my pastry business, really. But I use it as my personal Instagram handle. And so that's Instagram, and Instagram kind of automatically pops over to Facebook. And I am on some other stuff, TikTok, LinkedIn, but you can find most of my connections on my website. So that's probably the best place. And Out Loud is launching into the world September 22nd. And there will, I hope, be on Amazon, the ability to buy the first book, the second book, and the workbook in some kind of bundle.
And the third book will be when?
You're a funny man.
I want to thank Michele Vrabel for being here, and go to our website, which is michellevrabel.com. And you can learn all about her. It's been a pleasure having you here, my dear, and good luck in all the things that you do.
Thank you. It was my pleasure for both of you.
Thank you, Michele.
All right.
And have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at KM.